Good morning. I'm just delighted to be part of the MTS conference. As you start your own MTS process, it is useful to reflect on the evolution of TVS electronics over the last decade and at the same time reflect on the opportunities that it will have if we implement a clearly thought through strategy over the next 3 years. And that is the purpose of this meeting. You have built a very credible business of between 280 and 300 crores at this point in time. But the interesting thing is it represents a very large portfolio of businesses. In an interesting way, TVS Electronics can best be described currently as a very large incubator of high-tech business ideas. There are so many ideas, maybe about 20 businesses that constitute the 300 crore business that you have. You also start with some very interesting privileges as an incubator. Your brand is very well known. TVS is known around the country, and at the same time, TVS Electronics is also very well known throughout the country. You have a very high-tech image, and I think you have a national distribution and services capability, as well as the reputation and respect amongst your competitors and your customers. These are very important assets to protect and nurture and leverage as we move along to the next round of growth. Now, the question that we all face is to say, the past has been good, it has been a lot of fun, we have experimented a lot, but how do we take the 300 crore businesses spread across a wide variety from contract manufacturing to power electronics to point of sale systems to consumer finance to automotive design and delivery services, a wide range of opportunities, and create a 1,000 crore business in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think that's the challenge. If you just grew at the rate at which India is likely to grow in the next 3 years, you'll end up being a 400 crore business. But that is not what this 3-day conference is going to be. It is about how to take it from 300 crores to 1,000 crores, a quantum jump in capabilities, in our respect, in our capacity to invest, in scale, in scope, and certainly market influence and technological capability. So the tasks are fairly difficult, but very exciting. And what I like to talk about and share with you is my excitement on how this company may be poised for growth if we do the right things. Let me take stock of where we are and what we need to do. You have a wide variety of businesses at various stages of development. System media business, for example, is just evolving, but with a tremendous potential, especially with the connections that you have with the system media companies around the world. When you start bundling not only your cartridges, but with other products from other companies, it can be a very, very large business, but it's just starting with very little market influence and certainly market share. On the other hand, your printer business is quite well developed. Not all businesses represent the same kind of opportunity or the same kind of strategic task before us. For example, system media business is in its infancy. Your special cartridge for printers coupled with products from other companies can represent a phenomenal growth opportunity. On the other hand, at this point in time, you have very little market influence, very little distribution, but that needs to be built. On the other hand, your printer business is very well established. It's well known, it has a good market share, and the opportunities for growth in this business is also quite interesting and exciting. So we need to really start understanding the strategic variety that you have in your portfolio and to develop different kinds of strategies for different businesses so all of them can reach its full potential. Now, in order for us to do that, you cannot have one strategy for TVS electronics. You need to disaggregate them into specific businesses and understand the unique business models that we need to develop in each one of them. Understand the nature of the customer and their behavior, and certainly understand the product and technology requirements in order to succeed in those businesses. So what I'm going to suggest that we do is to take some examples to illustrate how we think about business models, how we think in terms of technology requirements, and what is the nature of risk in each one of those businesses, and what do you as members of specific businesses have to contribute and do in order to realize the full potential of your businesses. And that is a somewhat of a different process from not necessarily focusing on each one of the businesses as if they're distinct. Imagine, the best way to imagine what you have to do in order to succeed is to behave that is the only business that the company has. If that's all that you have got and nothing else, how would you focus your energy? How would you focus both intellectual and emotional energy to make it work? That, I think, is the spirit which you have to bring to each one of those businesses. And I'm going to also argue the opportunity here is so large that it is easy to get carried away. So we have to find a way of thinking big but de-risking the opportunities so that we just don't take unnecessary risk. Strategy is not about taking risks. Strategy is about de-risking big opportunities. And I want to emphasize, it is about de-risking. Therefore, we need to be careful in how we grow and at the same time how we get our energies together into one focus. Now, let us think about some principles on what is involved in going from 300 crores to 1,000 crores. To me, the most important first principle is clarity to strategy. If somebody cannot tell me strategy in 1 minute for the business, that means you have not thought about it hard enough and you have not crystallized the kernel, the fundamentals of what we are trying to accomplish. So let me take one example. Take, for example, your consumer finance business. It has a very clear strategy and it must be obvious to everybody. The strategy is very simple. We will concentrate geographically and therefore concentrate on 4 southern states. There is enough business here for us to grow as much as we possibly can. So first is geographical concentration to build distribution intensity. What is valued today in the marketplace is the quality of distribution, not just the numbers of customers that you have. That means you have to have distributional intensity in 4 geographical areas. The second element of that strategy is businesses are different. You cannot be providing loans for any kind of product and services that your customers may demand. You are very good at two-wheeler finance, focus on two-wheeler finance. Maybe used cars, maybe small cars, but mostly as cross-selling opportunities rather than new prospecting opportunities. So if you start then getting the second element of strategy, that is about very focused view on the products that we will service. In other words, loans for two-wheelers, and for the customers who are in good standing, may be an opportunity to get a four-wheeler loan, not anything else. Third, the biggest opportunity and the biggest threat in terms of building a quality of the portfolio is to ask the question, do we really understand the risk in this portfolio? Especially when you have distribution intensity, you bring in more people into the family, how do we assess the risk of individuals represent as well as the risk that the portfolio represents. That means very world-class understanding of risk and risk assessment tools applied continuously. That means we have to have a very detailed approach to credit management, credit analysis before giving the loans, and making sure the collections take place and all the procedures that are required in order to make sure your portfolio is not only good and growing, but very healthy from the point of view of risk. At the same time, in order to retain customers, in order to compete effectively with your competitors who are many, many times larger than you are, you have to be extremely focused on providing a level of customer service that none of them can. But in order to provide that quality of service, we have to build the underlying infrastructure tools, not just the IT tools, which are terribly important, but also the quality of training of people who have to interface with our customers. So it is building the social and the technical infrastructure simultaneously so that we do create the capacity inside this business to be world-class in customer service and create a very fine experience for our customers. So what does it mean? Clarity of strategy in this case says that I can represent a simple diagram in one page which everybody in this business can fully understand. 4 things we have to do clearly. 1 is geographical intensity. Number 2, focus on products that we will finance. Detailed understanding of risk and the development of risk tools and the implementation of those risk tools in the business, both at the individual level, geographical level, income level, and of course the whole portfolio. And finally, very experienced consumer experience enhancing social and technical infrastructure. That's all we need to do. And I think if we can implement it for the next 3 years flawlessly, then we are going to have an exciting, very large business, which all of us can be very proud of. The second principle that I would like to focus on is extreme clarity to the groups that we are going to manage. What are the business clusters that we are going to manage? What are the businesses that we are going to manage? Take, for example, printers. It is a 180 crore business. It can have the potential to grow within the planning period to 300 crores just within India, and it may also be able to grow in other countries like China and Southeast Asia. But just let us focus on growing in India. In order to first manage a 180 crore business very well, and then take it to 300 crores in the next 2 to 3 years, requires a very dedicated team of management. And what I would like to suggest is, when we talk about clarity, we need to have the same groups of people all the time focused on and concerned about how to make this business into a 300 crore business. Nothing else. I don't want you to worry about anything else if you're dedicated to the printer group. Because unless we get that kind of dedication, if you're going to fragment our management effort, if you're going to fragment our thinking, if you're going to fragment and think about all kinds of other opportunities other than printers, the printer group will never be able to get to 300 crores. In other words, the scarcest commodity we have is intellectual attention, managerial drive, and that cannot be fragmented. So what I like to suggest is identify, and that is what the process has been in the last 3-4 months, where your colleagues have intensely worked on this issue, is to get absolute clarity to the boundaries of each business and then say, this business has the following opportunities. These are the requirements in terms of new technology development and channel development. But Once we understand it, this group is going to do it. There is no other task for this group. You should not be allowed to fragment yourself into anything else. So the second thing is very focused groups which are focused on specific businesses. Third, and the third principle is very important, which follows from number 1 and 2, is we have to reduce complexity. And one way of reducing complexity, and I think it's very seldom we understand this principle, is knowing when to say no. Strategy is not doing everything. Strategy is knowing what to do and what not to do. And what not to do is as important as knowing what to do. And I think we have had very interesting discussions on the nature of contract manufacturing. And I believe that contract manufacturing has very clear focus on things that they will do. So the folks who are involved in selling our contract manufacturing capability will participate in markets that allow us to leverage what we have rather than imagine all the other possibilities. It is also important for us to say what is the minimum quantity that we need to get in order to make something a viable customer and a viable business. If you go to Selectron or Flextronics, they have minimum quantities. You cannot just go and tell them that we want to get 100 units of this fabricated. They're going to say no. If you're going to say how about 500,000 units, then you have a chance to talk to them. Now, we are not in that position today, but neither should we accept all kinds of orders which nobody else wants to take and fragment our capacity and also the setup time and the management time. So my suggestion is, and we have talked about this quite a lot in the contract manufacturing group, decide on 2 or 3 capabilities that you want to exploit and leverage in the marketplace. Do what is within that framework and don't do anything else. So we are going to have to follow these 3 principles: clarity to strategy, clearly focused businesses, complexity reduction, as a way of leveraging ourselves into the future. What does it all mean for us moving forward? It means that each business head, and I want to go back to consumer finance because it's the easiest one to explain this with, I want each one of them to be able to say in one page, what is the strategy? What are the critical tasks that we have to perform in order to get there? What is the implementation milestones? What are the metrics? For example, in the finance business, the metrics could be very simply default rates. It could be acquisition of new customers. It could be cross-selling opportunities and how many cross-selling opportunities were identified and were leveraged. So you develop unique metrics for your business. Maybe 6, maybe 7 metrics, not 500 because nobody can follow 500. In other words, we need to spend a fair amount of time saying, what are the 4 or 5 metrics that fundamentally tell me whether we are succeeding or not? And finally, to be very clear in who is going to do what to make that happen. So if each one of the businesses started with just one page, and every one of you had in that business the same page, we are all singing from the same page, then the music can be very good. If each one is following a different script, even though we are well-meaning, the music cannot even happen. What you get is noise. What I think this process is trying to do is to reduce the noise, increase the signal strength, and create harmonious music. So we all are singing from the same page within that business. And that also allows us not to get distracted with anything else. Because you know, this is the strategy, these are the tasks, these are the metrics, and this is what you as an individual contributor in that business have to accomplish in order so that the team succeeds. Now, in some areas, it is a little bit more complex. Take, for example, power electronics. Power electronics has 2 sides to it. One is the OEM side, your GE business, which is global. You have to design, develop, deliver. And that is a very different task from developing a low-cost, individual consumer-oriented UPS for the Indian domestic market. That, I think, requires a different kind of design, development, and delivery model compared to what you have to do to deliver power electronics to GE on a worldwide basis, and GE-like customers on a worldwide basis. So in this case, even though it is one business called power electronics, there are two different business models with different economics, different requirements. That, I think, is important for everybody inside to understand. You may transfer and you may leverage the knowledge you derived from working with GE into building the local power electronics. But you should not confuse the underlying business models and how we make money in the two businesses. And therefore, it is a little bit more complicated than the clarity that you have in financial services. It is only complicated because inside we should have the clarity to say, when we approach GE and GE-like customers on a global basis, this is what we do. This is how we make money. This is the business model. Then I have a different business model on how I make money if I have to sell 300,000 or 400,000 units next 2 years in rural India or to individual consumers in India. The competition is different. The cost structures ought to be different. The prices are different. And the profitability has to be very high because the risks are also very high. So as you look at the various businesses, the same thing happens in the printer business. There is clearly a domestic focus for printers. There is a huge opportunity as India grows dramatically and the intensity of IT grows dramatically. PCs proliferate in India. We need lots of printers. Just to have an account manager who understands how to sell to the governments. Everybody from UP and Bihar to Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu is very important because that business could represent a big growth opportunity. So somebody who understands who are the contacts, somebody who understands how to leverage every RFP that is floated so that TVS is there everywhere is very important part of the growth strategy. So we have to get very granular. It is not to say this is how we go to market with printer business. We need to understand printer business going through traditional distribution channels, going through large institutions, going to the government bureaucracies are very, very different channels with different lead times for selling, different capabilities for selling, and obviously different business models are required in order to understand the underlying profitability and the structure of profitability. So the task that is in front of all of you is now to get very granular and to have the courage to say, I can allocate this amount of manpower and capability in order to get this price. Now, let me alert you to what the disease is in most companies. They say the business is not big enough, so I cannot have a full-time person there. The flip side of it is, if you don't put a full-time person, the business is never going to get big enough because there is nobody focusing attention on exactly how to leverage that business. So it's our job as leaders in this room to say the business with the government could be quite significant. It could be 75 to 100 crores in the planning period. If that is that big a business, then let us allocate one person full-time so that he or she makes it possible for us to get a disproportionate amount of that market share. So you have to decide where to place your bets. And the bets are not only about money. The bets are about where do you put your best people, and the best people should be put behind the most attractive opportunities, not necessarily the biggest problems. The biggest problems needs a different kind of person to fix, and I'll come to that. But the big opportunities must attract and must be supported by the best managers, so we realize those potential opportunities. Obviously, in order to do all the above, we need fundamentally new capabilities, both managerial and technical. The best way to think about is how do we build these competencies rapidly and at low cost? For example, product development in the printer area has not kept pace with the growth of the sophistication of the technology that's available and also the sophistication of our customers. And I believe that last 2 or 3 years we have not paid as much attention to the technology as we should have. We made phenomenal progress in the initial stages and then we slowed down and let it slip by. I believe that each business unit must say, these are the four fundamental technical innovations that I am going to commit to in the next 3 years. I do not want 100 innovations. Nobody can do it, including you. But if you can just focus on 4 or 5 maximum, and then I want each one of them to be layered. We want to do this first because, in other words, these innovations have to follow some kind of a sequence in terms of learning within the company as well as helping customers learn new features and functionalities. So the question is, how do we develop new product development capabilities? How do you develop new market capabilities and pricing capabilities? I believe that pricing is a fundamentally new challenge for all of us. I do not believe as much attention to pricing has been given inside the company as it should. So it is not to price yourself out of the market, but understanding real value to customers. So pricing is appropriate to the value that you provide to the customers. So these are some competencies you have to develop, and it cannot happen unless you have another sheet of paper which says, following the top sheet on strategy which I described, the second sheet of paper saying, these are the gaps, and this is how we are going to build the competency gaps up to requirement over the next 3 years. And I would like it to be as granular, each step outlined, including the rationale. So everybody in the organization understands. It does not matter whether you develop it inside the company or you subcontract and get somebody else in Taiwan to do it for you. But the important thing is you must know what you want. And you must know exactly why you want it and what will it do for you in the marketplace to increase your share and increase your revenues and profitability. So that is the second phase on how to build competencies and capabilities inside the organization. And I'll just come back and say channel management and pricing are 2 fundamental capabilities, not only technology capabilities. I believe if you have done it, the page 1 and 2, then I think we need to get into the discipline of monthly reviews. When you do the monthly review, for each business, it need be only 5 minutes. I do not think we should get into this very elaborate reviews where everybody sits and talks. If we all agree what the metrics are, what the milestones are in capability building, all that somebody has to come and tell me is, this is what we told you we will accomplish. We will accomplish so many crores in terms of dispersals per month in financial services. This is what we did and what the variance is. So if I'm interested in why the variance is 20%, I will ask a question. If I'm not, you get away with it this month. In other words, we have to get into the discipline of all our metrics, all our reviews reflecting what our strategy is, not metrics living by themselves because they're interesting and the strategy going in a different direction. So I like to get a monthly performance review, dates fixed for the next year ahead of time so everybody knows that that is when you have to do, and to avoid tap dance. In the United States, what we call tap dance is when the performance is low, we tend to constantly talk about all the good reasons why we are not able to accomplish what we promised. The typical question here is, oh, we are not able to sell because the monsoon was not good. That's the typical explanation in many businesses. What we want to really ask ourselves is how to become a very predictable organization from a management standpoint, not just in a quality standpoint at the manufacturing level and the product development level, but we become very, very predictable from a management level. What you see is what you get. What you tell me is what you're going to deliver. So there is absolutely no reason for us to spend a fair amount of time discussing why things did not happen. And the last thing I would say in performance review is candor. If you have a problem which you did not anticipate, talking about it openly the soonest you possibly can, not even wait for the monthly review, is a very good discipline, because things can go wrong, our assumptions can go wrong. But then we should put the entire energy of the whole organization to help you fix the problem, rather than wait for it at the end of the year and say we didn't accomplish what we promised to accomplish. So candor, honesty, ability to talk about problems, not about accomplishments, is very important. Like they say in the US and certainly in Dell, celebrate for half a minute, then start worrying about the problems. In a fast-growing, high-tech industry, there is time to celebrate, but not much. You have to focus constantly on the next round, new competitors, new opportunities, new technologies. So candor and honesty is an integral part of the performance review. It's not just about numbers. It's about whether we can trust each other. And I think we have to build a culture where people talk about problems and say, we are not going to be able to do it this quarter for this reason. Then we can decide whether it's a reason is a problem that all of us collectively can fix. So you can go ahead and say, maybe we can try it again. Secondly, feel free to ask for help. Part of the performance management system is also knowing when you say, I need more help in order to do this. None of us need feel that we have all the solutions and we have to solve all the problems ourselves. Nobody can. So just as well, take help. In fact, for those of you who used to be in the National Cadet Corps, it used to be an old saying, beg, borrow, or steal, but get the job done. Beg, borrow, or steal the best people from others if you have a problem to fix. And the last thing I would say is, in fixing problems, don't be bashful in hiring people from outside. You don't have to have all the skills inside, and I do not believe you have all the skills you have inside in every business to do exactly what we need to accomplish to go to 1,000 crores. So knowing how to selectively recruit the talent that you don't have is a critical skill that we need to cultivate and promote. So what we have here is a fair amount of clarity, consistency, focus, accountability, and performance orientation for 80% of the businesses that you're involved in. There is one business that I think still is in the process of getting the same level of clarity. And the reason is not that they have not tried, but the business inherently is a lot more complex. And that is the solutions business. And why is the solutions business complex? And the reason is it has hardware and software. It has to have a deep understanding of the domain, for example, grocery or pharma. At the same time, it must have modularity in the underlying architecture of the system so that it can be leveraged across multiple applications. So we need to start from domain understanding and business models and business strategy, then go one step back into understanding the architecture on how we are going to build the systems, then to go to the software architecture and the hardware architecture or device independence that we are seeking. And at the same time, in individual businesses, within that overall framework, we need to be extremely focused. For example, building a new, fairly sophisticated but a point of sale system for retail in not just the grocery sector but wide variety of opportunities at 3,000 to 4,000 rupees per box, where it can be just installed without too much worries and too much preparation, and where we can sell hundreds of thousands of them across the country, is a new strategy. And I think that's going to take a fair amount of effort to both design the product, understand the economics, understand the marketing channels, and how are we going to prepare these retail channels without significant investment of time and effort on our part to get them going. At the same time, we need to continue to do selling point of sale systems to the grocery and the pharma and the gas station business plus others. We want to continuously sell the point of sale solutions that have been so successfully sold to large both Indian and multinational companies like Hindustan Lever or Colgate. So there are different businesses within this mix. At the same time, they must all work together with a common framework. That is the task that is ongoing to get both the clarity to the overall architecture and so that we can leverage the individual bits and pieces in an interesting combination of ways, and at the same time be extremely focused on existing businesses as well as creating new opportunities for leverage. So this is one area compared to the clarity that you can have in financial services or contract development of design services, which is extremely focused on the automotive industry, extremely focused on a certain kind of design service, not everything for everybody. This requires a fair amount of sophistication, not because the individual businesses are any more complicated, because they all have to nest in the overall framework of a broad architecture. So what I think is interesting here is within the company, you have wide variations of opportunities, strategic requirements, and at the same time, all of them must be handled as accountable businesses by understanding who is responsible for what and how do we collaborate with each other. So we are come full circle. The last 4 or 5 months has been a process of getting clarity around how do we manage our businesses for growth. I think we have, for almost all the businesses, very clear strategies. The business unit heads have been very deeply involved in building those strategies. It is not thrust down the throat. They have participated effectively, and I have had the privilege of working with each one of you over a long period of time, but much more intensely over the last 6 months. I am very excited with the opportunities that you have. It is ours to lose. You cannot but grow. All that I suggest is don't get confused with everything else that is going on around. Just be very, very focused. And I cannot but say to this group, be like Arjuna, only see the eye of the bird. Don't get confused with the entire landscape, the sky and the tree and whatever else. Just like in the case of Arjuna, if you can convince yourself that you only see the eye and nothing more, I do know you will have a very, very successful next 2 to 3 years. And we can all be very proud of what India has accomplished and what you have contributed to the accomplishment of the goals and success of India. Thank you very much.